Brilliant. Okay. Yeah, as you heard, me and Al, about 5 years ago, we cycled through Siberia, and it was in winter. This was the first day of that trip, and it turned into a very long trip for me. It was a 3-year journey through the world to get back to London, cycling home from Siberia. That was 5 years ago, and it was a really hard trip on the bicycle in Siberia. It got down to -40. It was very cold. We were sleeping in a tent. But we found often, almost every week, we were invited to stay with people along the way, and it was amazing, not just in Siberia, but for the whole of my journey coming home to London, people were inviting us to stay, and this is one family we stayed with in Siberia. Right, that was 5 years ago. Fast forward to 3 weeks ago, me and Al are in England, and we decided to go on another adventure, and this was partly because we wanted to just go on another adventure, and partly we wanted to see our own country, and we also wanted to see if people would be as friendly in this country. So rather than going to Siberia, we decided to walk a lap of the M25 in January. So we put the dates in the diary, we set off, we thought the M25 is a pretty miserable thing really, but maybe it's more fun if you walk around it instead of driving around it. So that red line is the route we took, walking around it in starting on the 6th of January. As it turned out, that day was also the day the worst weather for about 30 years hit London, and you can see the headline and the sun there. About half the country took a week off work, but we thought it was a great week to, basically our job is to go and do silly things in silly weather. So we set off to walk around the M25, and it was great actually to set off walking. Previously I'd always cycled on my big adventures. Now I was walking, and there we are, just right next to the road. And it was fantastic, and it was a bit snowy. Obviously, there was kind of the worst snow for a very long time in our area, but it was really good to get started, and we weren't always walking right on the road itself. Often we were on the fields beside the road, and it was really beautiful. We had a kind of roaring motorway about 20 metres to our left here, but it was kind of walking through the hush of the fields of Kent, which was really, really wonderful. And we knew it was about 120 miles, so we had about 8 days to do it. We thought it would be reasonably easy. This is where we were camping. We decided we didn't need a tent because it was only England, so we just had this kind of sheet of waterproof something or other, which we would tie to tents. The farmers never minded us camping in their fields as long as we got up and left the next morning before they saw us. And one thing we also found was that it was actually a lot slower going than we'd expected. There were lots of forests in the way, people's houses in the way, all very inconvenient. We often had to walk 3 sides of a square just to kind of make some progress. We started to get really, really behind schedule, and that meant on the second day we realised we'd have to start walking into the night, basically. And we looked at our map, we saw there were 31 junctions on the M25, so we had to do 4 junctions a day, otherwise we wouldn't be able to finish in 8 days. So we started walking into the night that second night, and at the same time my feet started to really hurt. I hadn't really been on a seriously long walk before, and I started to get these awful blisters, which was really the beginning of a long week of pain in many ways. And that second night we stumbled into a pub in Redhill. We bought 2 meals each, and we were delighted when we got chatting to some of the other people in this pub when an Irish chap, there he is, Ronan, invited us to stay the night in his house. So far so good with our theory. Will British, people from our side of the world be as friendly as elsewhere in the world? Well, Ronan was good for that theory. An Irish guy invited us to stay on our second night, and we had a warm bed and a hot shower, so that was brilliant. The next day we kept on walking. It was, again, my feet now were starting to really hurt. Al seemed fine. I have to admit, Al has got a ridiculous pain threshold. He seems to enjoy doing painful things, unlike me. So I started whinging a lot, but we were making good progress, and it was just fantastic to see these kind of conditions. A few nights later, we were kind of camping most nights, but we thought, let's try and find another night to stay. So we went into another pub, had some food, the locals bought us a beer, and we met an English guy called Paul. And Paul was English, not Irish this time, and he had kids, and he wasn't quite brave enough to have us in the house. So he said we could sleep in his garden. So we set up the camp in his garden, and the next morning he appeared in his boxer shorts with a nice English cup of tea. So at least we got a cup of tea of an Englishman. So this was boding well so far. We continued on most days. We were kind of eating lots of chocolate. This was our lunch that I made for Al one day. He was very thrilled when I decided to kind of crack out my number one recipe of bread and ketchup. One other interesting time, a guy cycled down the road towards us one morning and announced that he'd seen Al's Twitter and would we like to come for breakfast? And this guy had come and found us. He had us in for breakfast. Continuing on, my knees and my feet hurt more and more, especially carrying this heavy pack. And I was delighted when I found a child's sled abandoned in the hedge. So I put my bags on it, started walking, dragging the sled behind me. I felt a bit like Ranulph Fiennes now, dragging my gear through the wilds of Buckinghamshire. The sled I had to abandon, but I was even more happy when I found the shopping trolley. If you haven't yet seen the movie The Road, you must see it. It's an amazing movie. I felt a little bit like that, walking along, pushing my shopping trolley down the road. Then finally, we were getting towards the end now. This is South Mimms service station, 2 days before the end. I'm exhausted. Normally service stations are awful places when you're driving. When you're walking, they're just pure luxury. Pizzas and chips and service stations. Finally, we made it to Dartford Bridge. A policeman said we couldn't walk across, but he gave us a lift across. And finally, we made it home. Our two theories were tested. Can you have an adventure close to home? Yes, you can. And are British people reasonably friendly? Well, we got invited to stay in somebody's garden and lots of people talked to us and were very friendly, and an Irishman had us to stay, so I'd say the two theories were just about proved. Thank you very much.